This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Is your pet stressed out? Does your pet need annual vaccines? Which pet is best for a child? Would you know if your dog was in pain? Pet Life Radio presents The Pet Doctor, where you'll learn everything about keeping your pet healthy and happy. From pet care, pet meds and grooming, to pet food, pet insurance, and dental care, this is the place to find out everything there is to know about pet wellness. Whether you have a dog, cat, reptile, or rabbit, you'll find answers for your pets straight from the vets, because it's your pet. Health matters. Please welcome your Pet Doctor host, veterinary media consultant and veterinarian, Dr. Bernadine Cruz.
Since you're listening to this podcast, it's likely you're a pet lover. I'll further posit that you've used the services of a veterinarian to care for your pet. But are you aware without a veterinarian that the health of your pet, your food supply, wildlife, world health, and your personal health would be jeopardized? Being a veterinarian, you may think that I'm a bit prejudiced, and you'd be right. But my guest, Dr. Michael Topper, the 2017-2018 President of the American Veterinary Medical Association, is also in agreement. Plus, he has the expertise to substantiate these claims. We'll be right back after this short break.
Listeners, I'd love to introduce you to PetPlate.com. They deliver freshly cooked human-grade dog food right to your door. I'm talking about dog food that is so high quality that even us humans could, technically, eat it. I've been feeding PetPlate to my pup for the last 2 weeks, and it's perfect for my picky pup, and perfect for me since I'm so busy. So if you want something super healthy, really tasty, and ready to serve, go to petplate.com/spot to get 30% off your first box. Once again, that's petplate.com/spot to get 30% off your first box. petplate.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Dr. Topper, I am honored that you're with us today. This is just really a major thrill for me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be chatting with you today on this, what I consider also a very important subject.
Well, you have, and as we go through this scenario that I'm going to set up, you really do have the expertise that so many veterinarians are aware of, but we don't do it ourselves. And you've done a little bit of everything that it's so great to see that veterinarians, as I know, and I think people are becoming more aware, are involved in so many aspects of that one world, one health, one medicine philosophy. We really do all have to work together. So let me set up this scenario. All right, so scenario. A woman, let's call her Missy. She lives in a small town in Montana. This morning, she's nudged awake by her cat Lucy sneezing in her face. Lucy wants her breakfast, and she wants it now. Little does this feline know that on the way to work, Missy's dropping her off at the veterinary clinic to investigate the sneezing that's getting worse. The dog in the house, Zoe, is also sneezing, and she was doing it about a week ago and seemed under the weather, but it's better now. Interesting. One of the kids is also suffering from flu-like symptoms. Could they be related? As Missy drives past one of the factories on the outskirts of town, she crosses over one of the several rivers that traverse the area. She remembers a recent conversation she had with a neighbor. He was complaining that the trout fishing just wasn't as good as he remembers as a kid growing up here. Missy also realizes that she isn't seeing as many bald eagles flying overhead on her morning drive. Could they be related? She arrives at the medical office where she works and checks the list of today's patients. She's a nurse at an oncology practice. Missy glances at her desk and spies a journal. She's been meaning to read it, with an article discussing something about dogs and kids having bone cancer. Could they be related? Before heading home, her mom stops at the market for some goodies for dinner. Spinach for a salad, maybe hamburger, or chicken. What was that story she heard on NPR about mad cow disease and avian flu? One last task, rent a movie for the evening's entertainment. Outbreak, a fictional story about a monkey spreading a deadly viral disease. Only in Hollywood. Or is it? Okay, so a lot to cover, but I think you can do it, Dr. Topper. So let's start off with this kitty that's sneezing in Missy's face. And then the dog was sick and the kids have the flu. Are they related?
Well, it's a very, very rare possibility that they are related. The kitty most likely has a viral disease that is causing her sneezing, or she could have become just irritated by something new in the house that is causing her to sneeze, just like us. The dog, depending on what it's sneezing for, could have similar things. There is a disease of dogs out there called canine influenza. It has been experimentally transmitted to cats, I believe, but I don't think there's any work out there or any articles that have shown it's been naturally transmitted to cats or to people. It's distinct from human flu, and it typically the dogs act like they do have symptoms similar to people. They will be lethargic, they have a fever, but it's typically self-limiting, and only if it does develop into worse signs, similar to a person, if they develop a pneumonia or just get sicker and sicker, then, it becomes less self-limiting in dogs, and, we would probably need to take more aggressive therapy actions with that.
But it is a good idea to keep your pets vaccinated, correct?
Well, it is. There is a vaccine for canine influenza. There are vaccines against feline respiratory diseases. So, yes, it's always a good thing to vaccinate your animals and, children against commonly preventable diseases.
Awesome. All right. So one of the things I noticed going to the AVMA website, and I love it because there are so many different alerts that I would not be aware of otherwise, is the fact that a lot of my clients like feeding raw foods, but veterinarians do get involved in nutrition. What's the viewpoint of the AVMA on feeding raw foods?
Well, the AVMA does have a policy that discourages the feeding to cats and dogs animal source protein that has not been first, subject to the processes that will help eliminate pathogens, and such as cooking or pasteurization through application of heat, because that will prevent the risk of illness to cats and dogs as well as humans. If this animal source protein, such as beef, poultry, pork, fish, milk, or eggs, if they are not properly processed, then we all run the risk of being exposed to things like pathogenic bacteria such as Salmonella or Campylobacter or Clostridia or E. coli or things like that. So just, when they have to be handled, and then if they're not properly stored, then, both the animals and the human who is preparing that can be exposed to these diseases unnecessarily.
I know I have so many of my clients who want to make their own food, maybe not even raw, and they fix, add a little of this and a little pasta and maybe some vegetables. But it is such a difficult task to really balance a diet for a cat or a dog. So I always tell them, if you want to try to make homemade cooking, seek the services of a board-certified veterinary nutritionist. And there are those out there in services that if you want to make your own food, you can do it, but get the proper formulation so you're not going to put your pet at risk for long-term problems because you're missing certain nutrients.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. We know there are some nutrients that are absolutely critical, especially to cats. And, if they're fed a tuna or raw tuna diet, that can be very detrimental to their health. But like you advise your clients, if they do prepare food, then it should be cooked and it should not be raw, and that they should take adequate precautions, on a daily basis, even if you do feed commercial food, to, wash up the pet's bowls routinely with hot soapy water, just as you take care of your own dishes. So to prevent, any spread of disease.
Okay, spread of diseases. Missy was driving over those rivers and seeing less eagles, and the guy was complaining about less trout. How are veterinarians involved with keeping trout in the streams?
Well, for sure, there are a lot of veterinarians involved with aqua veterinary medicine, so they do deal with the, care of fish and other aquatic wildlife. There are veterinarians who are engaged in protecting the environment, and they work with the Environmental Protection Agency at a national level. They would work with other organizations. So, we know that runoff can cause problems in streams. So we know that as larger food animal production facilities are most definitely involved with trying to prevent any of the runoff to enter the water supplies. So veterinarians are involved with all those things, protecting it, and then also moving away from the fish and into the other wildlife. Veterinarians are involved with control of wildlife and consult and work with the wildlife agencies, both at the national and state levels, to help protect the wildlife that is out there so that it can prosper and be enjoyed by all.
It's such a fine line sometimes between trying to get rid of some of the large predators. You think, these cute little bunnies, the bunnies are out there, but then you have the coyotes, and the coyotes are destroying all the bunnies. And yes, they're eating our cats and dogs. We're not keeping them indoors and being safe. But there is a real fine balance between predator and prey, and oftentimes the well-meaning people get in the way, such as Yellowstone many years ago, getting rid of all the wolves. But now that they've been reintroduced and veterinarians being involved in the process, it's really helped the ecosystem there, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I mean, your listeners can go out there and probably find a story that relates the entire thing with the introduction of wolves, where it even talks about how they changed the movement of the river and how the beavers had come back and everything there. So you're right. Everything has a place in nature, and we try to keep it at a balance as much as we can.
And the other thing that was found interesting, too, talking about how people can impact the environment, is Lyme disease in New England, how the land use seems to have changed, people moving into, where they want that beautiful surroundings, they want that wild area, but people moving into there really has disrupted the tick population, the deer, and now people are more prone to getting Lyme disease and even the chronic wasting disease that's happening in the western United States in some of the elk and hoof stock there. What's the relationship? Can you posit that?
Well, Lyme disease and chronic wasting disease are both diseases of animals, and in Lyme's case, it's also a disease of people, but they're caused by two different things. Lyme disease is definitely transmitted. It's a spirochete bacterial infection that can affect both dogs and people and may have similar signs of lameness due to joint inflammation. While the chronic wasting disease has not been shown to be transmitted to people or other animals, it is called a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, which is a pretty large word, but people may have heard of bovine spongiform encephalopathy when people were worried about eating contaminated ground beef that may have contained nervous systems of the cow.
So that was mad cow disease, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
You're right. That's probably a better word for it. But they are, while caused by similar-sized agents, they are not go back and forth between cows and the deer and elk. The disease in deer and elk is a terrible disease where it just literally causes the animals to starve and waste away, and they can't forage or eat properly, and it is causing a problem with the herds out there. But it is not transmissible to people in all the experiments that have been done. However, because nothing is a certainty, if people are consuming meat from an animal that has been hunted with that disease, again, it's probably best if they do not consume nervous tissue, the spleen, or the lymph nodes, but those are usually not common pieces of meat that are eaten from that type of animal.
All right. So now she makes it to work, and she works in an oncology practice, a cancer practice, and there was the journal about cancer in dogs and people. And I listen to the news, and you're not supposed to eat this because it can cause cancer. You shouldn't drink. Now going to some of the major coffee producers, coffee shops, because there's ingredients in coffee that can give you cancer. And it's like, really? How many gallons of this did they give to a little mouse? I know with your background, you were in the veterinary corps, and you were involved in research and development. Bone cancer in people and children. Now, these are naturally occurring. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about this translational medicine of seeing one and being able to help another species.
Well, in many instances, the same diseases that are found in animals are also found in people. One of which is this osteosarcoma. It's a common, I'll use pathology terms. It's not uncommon, double negative, where it's occasionally seen in dogs, and the treatment can be similar. They may have simple progressions. We know that other types of cancers that can be seen in dogs also can be seen in people, and we use some of the treatments back and forth between them. Most of the oncology drugs that are used in animals are those that have been used in people, and veterinary oncologists are trying to see if they are effective in dogs. As we do know that, the metabolism of different drugs between people and animals is different, so there's not 100% correlation, but people do work on them and to see if they are effective. We know that metabolic diseases of people are also seen in animals. We know that diabetes is a common problem in dogs and cats and can be treated similar to how it's treated in people. Dogs don't usually have a big problem with hypercholesterol like people do, so that may not be a major issue. But cats frequently are hyperthyroid. And, some of the treatments available, such as irradiation with iodine, are valuable treatments in both people and in these cats. So all the research is done on these different new drugs. Many of that is done on animals first, because that's a requirement of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And so we can see if these are treatable and working in animals. And if they are, then the Center for Veterinary Medicine, if an animal drug producer is interested in that, may be able to approve them for direct use in animals. So it's a very long and engaged process, but both, most animals and man will progress and be able to benefit from all these different things.
I find it fascinating when I have a pet, the cat that has an overactive thyroid, and I tell them that we're going to have to do radioactive iodine, and they give me this look of, oh my goodness, my cat's going to glow in the dark. And I tell them, they do this in people all the time. It's an outpatient procedure. It's really very safe, and it just puts them at ease that they realize, okay, they're experimenting on my cat. This is something that is tried and true, and how one species can help the other. I'd like to take a short break right now, Dr. Topper. Be back and talk a little bit about your background so my listeners can really understand why you do have this expertise. So hang in there. We'll be right back.
Please have a seat in the waiting room. The doctor will be with you shortly, right after these messages.
Tired of wasting money on giant bags, boxes, and jugs of litter that don't last? Switch to World's Best Cat Litter, the only litter that lets you use less and get more. World's Best Cat Litter uses the concentrated power of corn to deliver outstanding odor control and easy cleanup. It's lightweight, 99% dust-free, and pet, people, and planet friendly. It's even flushable. Make the switch to World's Best Cat Litter and save $2. Visit www.saveonworldsbest.com.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Dynovite for life.
Pick up 2 tubes of Dogosuds.
Get the 3rd tube free.
Peppermint, tea tree, lavender, Dogosud shampoo.
Made with all-natural coconut, jojoba, aloe. Great for healthy skin and soft, shiny coats.
But no itchy, harsh chemicals.
Lather up, rinse away.
Try Dogosuds. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Pet Doctor on Pet Life Radio. The doctor is in, and we'll see you now.
Dr. Topper, your background is amazing. If you could give us a synopsis of, all right, you graduated from veterinary school and then you took it in a different direction than I'd say the majority of veterinarians, but a great direction.
Okay, sure. I was fortunate that I had a scholarship, a national ROTC scholarship out of high school. So my education, my undergraduate education was paid for by the U.S. Army. And then I applied for veterinary school and was accepted. And then I asked the Army to allow me to defer my service for that scholarship until after veterinary school, and they all agreed. So after graduating from veterinary school, I entered the U.S. Army as a captain in the veterinary corps, and after completing my Army basic officer training and veterinary corps officer training, I was assigned to the Army Environmental Hygiene Agency in Edgewood area, Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. And there I was fortunate enough to be engaged in some applied toxicology research where the Army was working on developing some new pesticides that would be impregnated in the soldiers' clothing to prevent those ticks from infesting and fleas and other animals from infesting the soldiers as they were doing their maneuvers. So during that time, I got very much interested in veterinary pathology and was interested in doing a residency. And the Army said, well, Captain Topper, we'd be more than happy to take your application for this residency program as soon as you finish your overseas assignment. So I was assigned to Nuremberg, Germany.
Not too bad.
It was a beautiful site. In fact, we're going to go visit our friends there at the end of the month. But this was during the Cold War, so it was interesting times in Germany. So as a veterinary corps officer in Europe at the time, we had an area of responsibility to take care of the soldiers in that area. And then by taking care of the soldiers, we took care of the military working dogs that were involved with them. We took care of the public health aspects, such as we inspected the establishments that were selling food to the U.S. government. We inspected the establishments that were storing the food the soldiers ate. And then we also went around and looked at how the soldiers were storing their field rations at the time and things like that. But we also provided service to the service members' families who did own pets. So we ran full-service clinics for the family members' pets over there. So it was a very exciting time, and we were engaged in all aspects of veterinary medicine.
That is impressive.
So after I finished that, I was allowed to train in veterinary pathology. So I came back to Washington, D.C. and did a residency in anatomic veterinary pathology and followed that up with an assignment up at the Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. It's commonly known as USAMRID or RID. And I guess for your listeners, it's more famous by being in the movie Outbreak, because this is where they did research on Ebola and other diseases that are not found within the continental United States. So we supported research in those to help prevent the soldiers from being exposed to them and or prevention and treatment of those during, again, any other assignments outside the United States. Continuing on, I was allowed to, I applied for and was granted permission to attend more training and did a residency and a PhD in clinical pathology at the University of Georgia. And from there, I moved on to other aspects in the world of military research and development when I came back at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in Washington, D.C. And there we do research to help, again, everything to prevent disease and to treat any disease in the soldiers. So we supported infectious disease work, we supported combat casualty care work, and we supported prevention and diagnosis of any chemical and biological warfare agents. So after 22 years, it was time for me to move on from the military. So that was an exciting and great part of my career. However, the second part of my career was to engage in the human pharmaceutical industry, where I went to work for Merck Research Laboratories, which is the human pharmaceutical side of Merck. The animal side is called Merck Animal Health. But here, again, doing clinical pathology, we were responsible for providing care to all the animals who were engaged in developing new drugs and to make sure that they were healthy for these trials. And then once during the trials, that any data we collected to them was able to be used to further the development of these important human pharmaceutical drugs.
And then you're still going.
I was elected president of the AVMA and decided that I could not be working for a corporation because this job entails almost full-time work. So I retired from there and joined representing the veterinary profession as president on a full-time basis.
It is rather, yes. I am feeling very inadequate and very tired after listening to all that you have done, but I think the listeners can understand why you are the perfect person, Dr. Topper, for this segment today. So, all right. After that, let's get back to our scenario. So Missy goes to the grocery store. And as you were saying, how much you were involved in making sure that the food supply was safe for the Army. Now we're having to see that veterinarians are also involved with the food supply that the general public gets. So here she is at the grocery store, and she's going to be getting her spinach. And the reason I bring up spinach, it was several years ago, about 2006, here in California, where packaged spinach was a source of illness, and I think it was about 3 deaths throughout the United States. And, Mom always said, wash your fruits and vegetables, but washing wouldn't have made a difference. Can you comment a little bit about that E. coli outbreak that happened at the time and how veterinarians were involved?
Well, I don't know all the specifics of that one, but I do know, other instances where, E. coli was involved. Again, this is something that gets onto the plants and, as they're picked, they could be transmitted either from the stuff that is put on as a fertilizer or a individual during the packaging of it. So it could have been contamination during the packaging of any of these things, or a contamination by one of the workers who are involved with this. We know that, there are certain strains of E. coli that are much more pathogenic than others. And so, we need to be involved with, the sources of these contaminations. So we know when it was found in the beef industry, cattle can be tested to see if they are have this certain type of pathogen. The byproducts of the meat can be tested before it's shipped out to see if it's contaminated. And so we can prevent it in that way. I'm a little less clear on how the prevention was in the spinach, but, I'm sure it's a similar way.
I will jump in on that one.
Tested.
Probably because I'm from UC Davis and I'm a little bit prejudiced. It was veterinarians at UC Davis who determined that it was the wildlife in the area that had defecated into the water, which got into the watershed, which got incorporated into the spinach itself. So is now learning of how these farmers were going to have to work with wildlife to protect their fields in the watershed so it wasn't getting in there. So it was a kind of a circuitous route. So sorry to set you up for that one.
Well, no, that's good. I mean, we know how things like by accident, there was a veterinary pathologist who happened to see she was working up at the Bronx Zoo.
Oh, perfect. You read my mind. Definitely talk about that one.
And happened to notice a number of wild birds and crows, et cetera, were dying. And she did some further investigation into that and discovered that it was West Nile virus that was causing those, and proved that it was in the United States. And so we know about the West Nile virus, but yeah, it was a veterinary pathologist who happened to investigate and discover that, and and then she consulted with the Medical Research and Infectious Diseases, and they were able to work out about the West Nile virus. So veterinarians played a role in that one.
I may be somewhat making this too simplistic, but it was Dr. McNamara, I remember her name. And
Right,
yes, at the Bronx, she realized there was an issue, brought it to the CDC's attention, and basically it's like, oh, you're a nice little veterinarian. No, it's not West Nile. Go away. But she really believed it. And I believe she took it to Walter Reed, the veterinarians there, and they took a look at it and go, yes, this is West Nile.
Yeah, so she took it up to close to Walter Reed, the Institute of Infectious Diseases there that I was talking about earlier. That's how she got to do it because that was their level of expertise. And those diseases not found in the United States.
And you talked about Outbreak. That, yes, is a fun movie because it all ends beautifully, but it's based on a real story of what happened in Virginia, correct?
Yeah, so there was a small research facility in Reston, Virginia that did have some non-human primates, monkeys, there, and they noticed that they were dying and had some hemorrhagic disease symptoms. So in that case, the Army, because and the CDC, because of their expertise in diseases, and the military at the Institute of Infectious Diseases, because of their ability to deal with, or familiarity, I guess, with diseases that are not found in the United States, were called in, and samples were taken from these animals, and a lot of work was done to properly contain the facility and prevent any spread of the disease outside the facility. But it was identified as an Ebola virus. However, this Ebola virus is not the type that we've been reading about in the past few years that spreads through people and causes great morbidity and mortality in these people. But this one was just restricted. It was a different strain, and it only affected these monkeys that were in this facility or other monkeys. So it was able to be contained, and there was no zoonotic or threat to people out of this outbreak. But the veterinarians from the Institute of Infectious Diseases and the CDC were definitely involved with identification and helping to contain it.
And you're talking about these diseases that go from people to animals, vice versa, zoonotic diseases. And if I remember correctly, it's about 75% of all emerging diseases are considered zoonotic. So veterinarians really have to be involved in this.
Yes, it is a one health, like we like to say. So let's say you at your clinic see an animal who comes in and has diarrhea. And you know that, once you culture it, that diarrhea could be the cause for their small child that is with them for also having diarrhea. So we know that some of these diseases, like bacteria, like salmonella, can transmit easily between animals and people. And so we just all have to be involved with it. So both veterinarians and physicians, and it's more than just animals and man, it's also the environment. So we're all together here in this world as a one health.
And Homeland Security, I think a lot of people don't realize veterinarians are involved with that. So here we have the Ebola that came into Reston accidentally, but there could be cases where maybe they're using it to try to disrupt the economy by bringing in foot and mouth disease like they had in cattle in the United Kingdom. That was a real economically devastating event.
Yeah, so, the Department of Homeland Security and working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and its Animal Plant Health and Inspection System are looking for animals who are coming in the country that may be ill themselves, and to prevent this, the natural introduction of diseases. Bioterrorism is always a threat, so people are on the lookout for those type of things. We live in a world where we're one plane ride away from a disease outbreak, and so we have to take the best precautions we can. So that's why when you travel internationally, they do ask you about any foods or meat products or vegetables that you're bringing in, whether you've been to a farm and things like that, because it is to protect the U.S. Animal population, the food supply, and then, of course, the U.S. economy.
So it's important, don't sneak those things in because, this isn't going to cause any problems, but it could. And other problems, one last thing, is veterinarians being involved in emergency response. So fires, floods, earthquakes, all these disasters that occur. Yes, we think about the American Red Cross getting out there and helping, and other organizations also, FEMA, but veterinarians get involved too. Talk about that if you could.
Well, sure. We know that in any of these disasters, besides people being affected by them, of course, the animals are, and the animals being the pets and or the farm or wildlife animals. So in conjunction with FEMA, they're called National Veterinary Response Teams, where volunteer veterinarians are involved with that. They will go in and assess the impact to the animals. They will come in and help with any shelters that have been set up to see if they can provide any clinical systems, or they will do evaluations on the area that it may impact the veterinary medical community and pass that on to local authorities. There are many local, both state and community level veterinary response teams now. They're engaged in that. We know with the floods in Texas, the Texas A&M University College of Veterinary Medicine has a response team that we went in there and tried to set up clinical medicine areas to help any animals that were injured during this, because the veterinary clinics were destroyed by the flooding, or the workers were displaced. So we're always involved in that. The wildfires in California, there were numerous animals who were wildlife and domestic animals who were displaced and injured by the fires. So anytime that there is need for assistance by the local veterinary community, then these other disaster response teams are available to help.
Dr. Michael Topper, as president of the American Veterinary Medical Association 2017-2018, you have been an awesome guest. I know I've hit you with just so many different scenarios. You did a great job of explaining and telling people why veterinarians are important. Any parting words that you'd like to say? Anything that they can do to help the veterinary industry and help themselves?
Well, again, remember that we are one community, both animals, people, and the environment, and we need to take all into account is in our daily lives, and that we want to be kind to our pets and our other animals that we engage with, but also, to respect them and to respect their owners and people, and we all make the world a better place with animals in it.
I couldn't agree more. This is Dr. Bernadine Cruz. You've been listening to The Pet Doctor on Pet Life Radio. Thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you very much, Dr. Topper. I am extremely honored. Hopefully you'll listen again next week. We'll have more information on how to make you the best possible pet owner. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Pets can be a wonderful addition to your life because they're a member of the family. Keeping them healthy and happy is important. Pet Life Radio presents The Pet Doctor with veterinary media consultant and veterinarian Dr. Bernadine Cruz. Whether you have a dog, cat, reptile, or rabbit, you'll find answers for your pets straight from the vets. The Pet Doctor, on demand every week, only on PetLifeRadio.com.